categories. In the beginning of the year, we learn about learning skills, how to focus our attention, and use our assertiveness to ask questions. And we also cover empathy. And the second unit is on emotional management, where it focuses on dealing with strong feelings. The last unit at the end of the year is focused on problem solving. It teaches 3 main steps to solving problems. This incorporates, as you can see in the picture, I use with the smaller grades, the younger grades, I use puppets. The students love the snail puppet and the puppy puppet, and we also use a bunny for calming and talking piece. There's 2 components. There's follow-up in the classroom where teachers can use that ideas to practice throughout the week until I return for the next week. And there's also a worksheet that goes home called a home link, where students can practice at home with their parents. In addition, I also like to use another curriculum called Yoga Calm. And I just incorporate this mostly with the younger grades right now. It is an experiential social emotional program that's based on a calm, active, calm planning lesson. And it covers 5 principles. They learn about stillness, strength, community, grounding, and listening. The first picture is a pose that we do, an activity that we do called woodchopper, which releases energy, and they learn how their body is full of energy, and they release that. In the middle picture, we are practicing our tree pose. They're being strong individual trees, which of course then, as we look around, we see all of our trees in the forest. And they learn a lot about community because they're all a big forest together with their tree pose. On the right-hand side, they're resting and relaxing, but also giving themselves a nice big hug and practicing how kind and respectful they are, and just a relaxation moment for them. But most of all, this really covers how we can connect to nature. So it's so nice to have that full forest to remind ourselves that we are just learning how we are all part of the community in nature. So thank you for your time and thank you for listening.
Sorry, my name is Jennifer Brado, and I'm going to present to you a little bit about the history of the school forest and give you a little bit of context and background. In 1993, the original 170 acres of land within the school forest system was acquired due in large part to the amazing foresight by then Principal Gene Bell. Gene was able to see the intrinsic value of the property and knew it would be a treasure to the students that lived it. In 1994, it was registered as an official Minnesota school forest, and to this day remains the largest school forest in the Southern County metro area. It's also one of the largest in the state. Currently, we're at 210 acres in counting. By 1996, a formal agreement between Independent School District 831 and Luncheon Township was established, and very quickly, a community learning institute was created. Next slide, please. The 8-member School Forest Committee first formed in 1986 and is comprised of community-appointed and school-appointed volunteers who oversee the preservation and use of the park and forest. The forest consists of the major habitat types of the Anoka sand plain and offers one of the best opportunities to view native plants and wildlife typical of the Anoka sand plain in a pretty peaceful and quiet setting. Until you get the kids out there. The committee is definitely dedicated to supporting all of the educational activities of the system through using outdoor classroom, with students learning in apply math, art, science, language arts, and social studies, while also gaining an appreciation and awareness of natural resources. For example, one of the pictures that you see is of students using plots that were funded by the committee to capture images of different plant species to document phenological changes. Additionally, the committee runs several community events every year, including the trick-or-treat hike and the medallion hunt. We're always happy to provide everyone, both students and adults alike, with opportunities to connect to the natural world while building confidence, a sense of community, skill level, and knowledge base. Next slide, please. We are not the only ones who recognize the value of this hidden gem. Over the years, several partnerships and collaborations have developed, including partnerships with the Wildlife Science Center. They always bring an education owl to our trick-or-treat hike. They have opened the doors to Linwood Elementary students for a special Linwood Elementary Day at their site, and they've been big supporters of our campaign in 2018. Anoka Ramsey Community College is also a great partner of the Linwood School Forest. College students enrolled in field biology at Anoka Ramsey help with lessons in the school forest with the early kids, and they also collect data on the biodiversity of the forest using control panels. And they've documented upwards of 3 dozen species so far. We also have developed partnerships with the Miss the DNR. In 2018, we received a grant from the DNR, and you can see a picture there that shows the CCM crew that came in to remove hazardous dead and down trees from the southern corner of the forest with the classrooms hour card, and also teach the students how to identify dead trees. And they got a chance to help the crew flag hazard trees in the area. We're trying to that day. On our next slide, we can highlight some of the other partnerships we have going on with Anoka Conservation District. We have a couple of service learning projects that are coming up at the end of the year. And the first slide, if you want to hit the next slide, please. This first slide that's highlighting an upcoming service learning project is in accordance with or in association with the Anoka Conservation District. And students are going to help plant native wildflowers in the prairie adjacent to the school forest. And then we have another project coming up, which will be led by our fourth graders that are designing and installing a rain garden to include native pollinator plants at the front of the building. So both of those are the result of some grants that we've also received. Last but certainly not least, our most robust partnership is probably with Anoka County Parks, particularly Rural Nature Center. And Cody, the naturalist, is here to talk about all the lessons that we lead.
Hello, my name is Cody Rossetti. I'm a naturalist with Anoka County Parks, based out of Largo Nature Center. And Linwood Elementary is one of our largest school forest partnership program members. So for our school forest partnership program, we hand-tailor curriculum based on standards, school, forest, and grade. We perform winter, spring, and fall lessons for each grade level, including pre-K. So if you head to the next slide, I'll give you guys kind of a broad overview of what we do. I'm not going to go into all of our programming, but I would like the school board to get an idea of the type of programming we do. So in the fall, as you can see, it's varied as to whether we have snow or not. The kindergartners in the first picture there are learning number sets. So we're doing addition, subtraction, counting up to 10 through squirrel biology. So we get these squirrels and shake our bushy tails and collect acorns for the winter, add and subtract them, hide them, and then also lose what we've hidden to teach about how squirrel and oak relationships work. In the second picture, you can see our first graders are looking through a hula hoop and exploring the forest floor, learning about essentially a primer to ecology, learning how to tell whether things are dead or alive, and finding things that are dead, alive, or once alive in the forest. And I'd really like to highlight this because it's part of my mission as a naturalist to do some focused exploration time with children and let them really view nature focused during their lessons. The fourth grade, we also do a math-based lesson. They're working with area and perimeter. They build shelters, and then they draw a map or bird's eye view, and then measure those shelters and calculate area and perimeter in the forest. With fifth grade in the fall, we jump right into ecology, talking about biotic and abiotic factors, and they are tasked with labeling different parts of the forest ecosystem. So we talk about ecotones, relationships like mutualistic and symbiotic relationships, and we need to find examples of those throughout the forest. And so that brings us to winter. And so for our winter curriculum, I wanted to highlight our preschool. This year, preschool was talking about winter, and I brought some friends from Wargo. Some of my puppets helped us out. You can see Squirrel helping us learn about storing food for winter. We also talked about pattern recognition, so you can see some squirrel tracks there. We talked about how squirrels make 4 prints for each pattern, and how that's different from mouse's footprints. We had Owl out. Owl was looking for mice, of course, over in the prairie, and we were looking at 2x2 footprints for them. Second grade for winter time, we talk about Native American cultures or history, particularly the Dakota and Ojibwe, and we do this through games. And so the second graders are playing games that are traditionally Native American games, and we are picking out what skills they're learning through playing these games, and then how that would translate to a Native American's life and what skills they're building through that play. The 6th grade, their school force experience is more recreation focused, and we go through a snowshoe hike for them, or with them, and that's going to happen probably not on next week because it's a little cold. We're going to postpone that. But that's going to happen this winter too, and we're hopefully going to get all the way across the course with them. So for the springtime, we have a few little less pictures because we didn't have spring programming last spring. The 5th grade, we talked about phenology and for our impacts on the forest, even just temporary impacts. We do a 20-minute solo sync and have them record in 3-minute increments what they're seeing and hearing. And it really drives home how much temporary disturbance a classroom causes in the forest. Because, prior to that, students don't really have an opportunity to sit for a while in the forest, 20 to 30 of them. 3rd grade, we do our insects curriculum in either the spring or the fall, depending on weather. In this case, it was the spring this year in the prairie, and we sweep for insects in the prairie and other invertebrates, compare structures, and then we head into the forest and roll logs and compare the invertebrates we find there with the invertebrates we found in the prairie, and compare different structures and functions that make insects different from things like arachnids and worms. And so our curriculum is really based on hands-on experiential learning and is hopefully used as a springboard for further education in the classroom.
Thank you, Cody. I'm Tessa Abrahamson, and I am a 2nd grade teacher at Linwood, and I have been for several years, and I just love Linwood, and the school forest is one of the many reasons. And after we go for a lesson with Cody, we often do follow-up activities in the classroom. Like in the fall, we do some math activities and graph what we do. And also, we just did our Native American lesson this week, which goes well with our social studies that we're talking about. Also, as a teacher, I often take kids out in addition to when Cody comes. For example, the other 2nd grade teacher and I, Mrs. Koenig, took the kids out every week this fall because it was so wonderful out, and that was a perfect mask break, so that was great. And we just do different activities each time. We take clipboards out and just write down our observations, and then we come back in the classroom and write more about it later. We've covered reading, language arts, math, science, and social studies standards with the forest. And so other grade levels do that too, and so we just love having the forest for the experience, fun, fresh air, and exercise. And then we do follow-up activities in the classroom. A lot of other schools take field trips to Wargo or other nature centers, and we're just so lucky that we can just walk back there and go whenever we want. And so we are super thankful for these experiences that we're able to give our kids, and for all the partnerships we have. So thank you to the board for having us. We're really glad we got to share everything, or a few of the things we love about Linwood. And so if you have any questions, we will stick around for a little bit to answer your questions.
Questions of the board for any of the presenters?
One question.
Yes, I think you're right.
Is it what?
Yeah, you gotta get close, but get close to it so I can hear you.
So Tessa, how many years have you been at Linwood?
Good question. You're aging. So I was there back in '08 for a few years, and then I was at Forest View for a while, and then I've been back at Linwood for, this is my 4th or 5th year. So a few different times.
Well,
But I wanted to come back.
that's awesome. And I worked in your classroom many, many moons ago, and you are an excellent teacher, as are all the teachers out there. And Gretchen, what a wonderful video of all of you showcasing the forest. And could be a perfect time, this pandemic times and beautiful forest like that. I mean, that has to be perfect for breaks and for science and, like you said, all those other activities you can do out there. Does Bied use the forest as well?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Does Bied use the forest as well?
Yes, they do. And we have, on site at Linwood, we have skis and snowshoes. So often, our gym teacher, Erin, will take classes out to do skiing and snowshoeing, especially in the winter time, obviously. But Erin really does try to get the kids out as often as he can when the weather permits. So, and especially this fall, I think all of us can tell you, we were out there so often, even when we had snow. Jen and I were taking students out there in classrooms out there, and we would run into Cody, who had a class out there. So it was very well utilized, especially this fall, even when there's snow, the kid loves going out there.
Wow, and I just want to comment that that's an incredible fact that Wardlow Nature Center, that this is the longest Anoka County school forest connection and collaboration. That is amazing. I didn't know that. And Carrie, I wanted to ask you, is this the first year we're using the program Second Step at Linwood?
I believe this is the second year that we use this curriculum, but all the entire district doesn't use that. PLC with the other counselors, so they all use Second Step.
Amazing presentation on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just had a question about how does a forest like that, you would think would need some maintenance for the trails and keeping on invasive species, different things like that. How does that work get done?
This is an excellent question, Bree.
Points of yeah, it really is a great point to point out. We have a group of about 4 gentlemen that are on the committee. Bob Millerburn, Mike Pedersen, Jesse Riener, and David Johnson, that volunteer their time to maintain the trails. They use their own time and their own equipment, and they're very dedicated to it, and so we're incredibly appreciative to them for all of their efforts. So they're our primary caretakers and trail maintenance gurus. Sometimes when we have more work than possible for us to maintain ourselves, we look for grant opportunities. And so we're actually in the process of applying for an Anoka County neighborhood improvement grant too. So we get a little bit of extra work done when we can by applying for the money that's out there.
Right. Thank you.
I just wanted to thank you for such a great presentation, and we're so fortunate that we have the forest for you guys and to be able to have those students be able to enjoy them. And I just had a question regarding like other schools. Do any other neighboring forest-like schools get to go out there and get to experience the forest too, or is that just strictly for Linwood, or it's such a great thing to be able to share, and I just didn't know if there was any. So I know we do go to Wargo, and that's awesome too, but if we could, I had a question about that, and I also wanted to echo Member Tyson's about the video being on Facebook. It was so well received and so many shares and likes. So just seeing it showcased on there was just a great idea. So thank you for that.
Yeah. So I can tell you, and Jen can tell you.
I can speak to the field trip piece too.
Yeah.
When we were
So just so that everyone's aware.
we have to try not to talk over each
I'm
other.
gonna let you go first.
Jen, I'm so sorry. So Jen will talk about this because we recently talked about it at the school committee. But even today, when I was talking with Dr. Massey and Diane Georgie, we were just talking about how we are really working toward opening this up so that all of our elementary schools, and even we talked as a group when we were preparing this presentation, how great it would be at middle school and high school out in this forest, because it's in our backyard and all it would take would be busting. So those kids are amazing, and they're definitely in the works, and we're trying to figure those out. And I know Jen can kind of piggyback on with what we discussed with the school board committee.
Well, one of the goals recently is to increase awareness of the school forest, because it is actually a Linwood Township park. It's a public park as well. And so we're trying to get more people to utilize the park and enjoy it. And so one of the things that we're incorporating in the grant that we're going to be applying for is a third outdoor classroom installation on the north end of the park, which would be a better site if we're having big groups coming, because the parking lot on the north side is a little bit more accessible for larger vehicles. It would be easy to put a porta potty in that location, and then the location we're planning for the third classroom would be a pretty easy hike through some pretty amazing habitat. It's also on the north side of the park, which is not typically used by Linwood kids because it would take quite a while for them to get up to that side. So that way, if there were times where schools from other, field trips from other schools were coming out, they could be out in the forest at the same time Linwood kiddos are in the school forest, and they probably wouldn't even ever meet each other. So that would be a nice thing too. But it is a public park for all to enjoy. Open from sunup to sundown.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just want to thank you, Jennifer, because you have lent your expertise to this forest for many, many years. And we can't thank you enough for carrying that torch, and we're just so blessed to have you work out at Linwood. So thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you all for the presentation. I think it's such a great resource, and the partnership with Largo Nature Center and the work you do, Jennifer, it's amazing, all of you. I think we're really fortunate to have it in our district. So, all right.
Thank you.
I also look forward to when you all can present in person. All right, we'll move on to positive happenings. Member Olson.
Yes, I was able to attend the Mountains View versus Forest Lake girls hockey. Very exciting. So Forest Lake tied with 1.5 minutes remaining. They went into overtime, and Forest Lake scored with 20 seconds left. So Forest Lake won 3-2 against Mountains View. It was excellent. I was supposed to be there cheering on Mountains View, but I really wasn't. You know your loyalty lies.
Yeah, I'm on the YMCA board, and YMCA is kind of opening up as responsibly as we can. And I just, for my positive happening, I just wanted to go through, it's been a weird year for them. And, but when things close down, they really, became an important asset for this community. They had food distribution of 35,000 fresh meals prepared and 3,000 meal deliveries. They had child care for essential workers. They had distance learning to help students. They had summer programs and 300 kids per day at camp. They had community engagement of 12,000 plus wellness checks made to 2,600 seniors. They have assistance scholarships for families with child care and summer programs. And they worked with us on the Everyone Belongs initiative. They did great work there. And they have veterans outreach. And for teens, they have the Leaders Club and the Youth in Government. We heard a great presentation on that. And free membership often in the fall for teens who are past great Get Summer participants. And, the Y relies on a lot of volunteers. They have 600 hours of volunteer time. So I just wanted to I thought that was really positive, and I was really proud of the work they did. So I just kind of wanted to mention it here.
Yes, I wanted to highlight what was in our board packet about aquatics, how they've had to maintain a positivity and dedication, and they've really just gone all out to get families back in and to feel the empathy and understanding, getting them into swimming wherever they can. So I wanted to mention that. I also saw a great article by our principal, Julie Hall from Canada, on kindergarten roundup, and it was such a great article, so well written and warm. And I have had different parents asking for another family or parent what's going on with roundup and where do we go, and so just sending them to that article. It's a great article. Also, I wanted to highlight, this was positive happenings for me. Our superintendent sent out another great letter to families on Martin Luther King Day, and it just calls out all that's gone on, the trauma, the mental health, how our families and our students must be feeling getting through all of this. I really like what he said, that it is equally important that students of all races and ethnicities should have a strong foundation and understanding of the historic and cultural influences that have shaped and continue to contribute to the rich fabric of our nation. And thank you, Steve. I like how you talked about we're building this into our strategic planning, and you talk about the good work that we're doing, but yet you call out those images that are burned into our mind of the insurrection and all the inequities that have gone on. So thank you for that, Steve. The last thing, I took a great Ethiopian cooking class from Community Ed. My daughter is learning with us, and they're doing plant-based and all this interesting fun stuff. So got some fantastic recipes. Can't wait to tell Corey about it. And then that's the last thing I have to say. So,
thank you. So, most of us went to the NSBA conference that we'll be going over, but that was the dominant of January. I got to tune in to some of the basketball games as they were shared online by parent friends. I didn't get a +1 for anybody, so I haven't attended in person. C has been sending emails, and anybody can sign up for their mailing list, but they really have been tracking legislation that's been working through, and with the Governor Walz's North Star announcement, which Dr. Massey has also worked on, that launching last week. There's a lot of discussion that on different Facebook pages that I appreciate that we are, when people said, hey, we're doing that already, I'm like, yes, but not everyone is. And so it's gratifying to see that we're meeting many of the goals already, but also sharing those ideals with all of Minnesota for a more equitable education for everybody, but giving us more things to do in person can always improve. And that's C, and that concludes my report. Everything else is, are we doing community ed now or later? Later. Okay.
I added it to the committee to the report.
Okay.
All right. Member Portman?
Well, MC, of course. I got to attend quite a few great things. And of course, the update for the Minnesota High School Week was really enlightening. She did a really great presentation. The Y, of course, I've been going to the Y, and it's been great. They didn't act so safe. I feel like they're doing things really well. I mean, they're constantly cleaning. I mean, they're really distancing people. It's a little frustrating to get the one machine per row, but you just have to be lucky to get on it when you can. I did attend the KDI blood drive. I did do that a couple weeks ago, and I did not. I got the antibody test, and of course, unfortunately, I did not have them. So I was a little disappointed. But it was well attended, and they're so professional with North Memorial. They do a great job. And I had a Lucy's for basketball also. And they did say we can go to a game. We just have to go. I actually asked my tenant, I said, can we go to a game? Just go and, just by yourself, don't bring anyone with you, and we can attend. And I think that's across the board with most sports. I just don't think they want a bunch of people just showing up, but we can go. So, thank you.
Member Kettle?
I had a couple of things that are happening. One, because of my arrangements with the district to do some subbing, along with my short call license, I was asked if I could proctor at the high school for the ACTs coming up on March 2nd. So I'm going to be doing that for the district for the one day. I go through a training session and then actually proctor the ACTs at the high school. So I'm looking forward to that, getting back into the high school maybe at some point. The second thing for me is on Saturday, June 30th at noon, I virtually attended a Minnesota School Board Association Awards Luncheon.
Yeah.
And at the luncheon, virtually, I got show and tell tonight, I actually was awarded a leadership development certificate for completing phase 1 through phase 4 of MSBA training. And I bring that up only to say that that's how committed I am to the district. I think all of us have been through probably all 4 phases, but that's how committed I am. And so I was really happy that I could attend that and get these things. So that's it for me. I conclude my report.
Well, I would like to say first that Karen Moorhead would be so proud of you with your luncheon. And with that said, I had the opportunity today to attend a 7th grade basketball game. I was super excited to be there in person and see it. I had to miss a little bit of work, so I don't get in too much trouble. There was a meeting I skipped it. And then I attended a high school, what is going to be a high school foundation. It used to be a PTO that they're putting back together and getting moving again, which would be very interesting going forward. And what was going on? I didn't write it down. I can't remember now. But I had those 2 things. I was super excited to be in person in a basketball game today. We're missing out on a lot, and I can't wait till we get back to it. So with that, we will move on to reports, workshops, and conferences. Several folks attended MSBA, so I'm waiting to see who wants to go first.
I'm just going to say real quick, I was not expecting anything. I'm like, it's going to be lame, it's going to be virtual, it's going to be online, 0 expectations. It was fantastic. Yeah. It was easy to navigate. You picked your workshop or your seminar, and it was fabulous, and the choices were great. So kudos to MSBA.
Member Kettle?
I just want to add on to what Jill said. I was amazed too at the way they structured it, and especially the fact that once you were into it, you could actually go into a breakout session, and how quickly and seamlessly that happened. I mean, you could just click into it and get a room with 6 other people and talk about the information. I mean, that was amazing. Okay.
Sure, I will try to limit it to my top 2, but kudos to MSBA. They pivoted and they put on an excellent conference. But the opening keynote was Phyllis Braxton Pearson now, who I've seen several times over many years, and I really like what my takeaway from that is she talks about her intercultural development continuum and where are you on that, 5 steps on that. It's just a great for me to reflect on that and to look at where do I need to grow and where have I been on that. The 5 things are I got it right here. See, I take lots of notes too, Kate. But anyway, I like how she says if we work as a team, it's critical to team performance. If our differences when minimized, that get us into trouble. So intercultural competency is critical if we want to work as a team. So I'm really excited to do some more work in this area as a board. We're going to do it in the summer. Some of it. There was this slide she put up that I really liked. It says fairness is the final result of years of effective effort combined with the experience of diversity. And I think our district is really moving forward and we're going in that area and doing the tough work. So I really enjoyed her. I think she hit the nail on the head. And I know Member Olson talked about how she talked about VAI, how you validate, you know, I hear you, I agree, but I didn't, and then you appreciate, you say, I'm glad you told me, and then you investigate, you ask your question, you know, what hurt you, what happened, what can I do to help you? And it's just that empathy piece that we all need to just really be out in front with. So anyway, then the other thing that I really liked was Mary Catherine Rippert talked, and I know several of you listened to her, and my takeaway with her, she brought up a lot, we're going to be back to better. You know, we're just not going to get back, but we're going to be back to better, and I'm so excited for that time to come. And then I also thank you to Steve, because I thought it was just a great presentation by Kim Gibbons and the U of M research team. She used to work for SCRED. She was the executive director for SCRED. But it was bridging the gap, and she gives some great examples of how there's excellent research, but nothing happens for many years and many years of false spots. So she talked a lot about being able to, you know, do, in talking to Steve, we use a lot of research-based. We're doing letters and PALs, and she said, I just go with ABT. If you know, students can't learn to read, they need them taught. And it's so true with young adults, even we mentored some teenage boys, and when you can't read applications and you can't read, it's just a tough thing. So it was all focused on research-based practices, and I'm just so happy that we're already doing that piece with literacy, and it's very strong in my district. So we have that to be proud of. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Member Tyson. Thank you.
Thank you. So as Alex mentioned, you know, I've been going through the MSBA training, and my 4 got canceled. I got COVID canceled, but in 3, they really did. They stressed that in committee meetings, the point is that you take notes and then you share it with the group and share it with the community. So I tried to be better about recording things and having it accessible. So I won't read all my extensive notes, but if anybody ever wants more, I took notes and have things on each of these. So the MSBA conference, I agree with Jill. I almost liked it better than in person. There's things I miss. There's definitely things I miss about networking, but for ease of actually getting information, this was easier, because I could focus better. I didn't have to worry about running to and fro. There wasn't anything that was too crowded and you didn't get a seat. So and it split up over 2 weeks. It really did spread it out a bit. So the Minnesota High School League, I thought was completely about sports, and so I was mistaken. It's about all sorts of team activities. And so listening to their hour-long discussion and very frank discussion on finances and what they're doing, it gave me an appreciation for what they're trying to do for kids, and that we don't have another option either. So they can't just close their doors without hurting a lot of people, so they're looking for ways to keep it going. And a lot of it is through fees, so the sooner they can get tournaments, the better they can get back up again. I attended the electronic monitoring policy. I brought it up in the policy committee also, and it's a revolving door of, should you have an electronic monitoring policy and then be guilty of possibly not doing it well, or should you not have one and potentially be guilty of missing something? So that's something that a lot of boards are discussing. It's also being discussed at state and federal levels about mandating or strongly advising. So it's something that maybe we can discuss in policy or as a board. But there's lots of catch-22s in it, that it's got such good intentions, but it can also be misused or missed. Then a fun one about superintendent goals. So, you know, there's an entire book on ways you can get goals for a superintendent. I can tell you're smiling. But as we will be going through that process in the summer. North Branch did a presentation on their COVID response and how they ended up using the outlet mall, the empty stores, to help spread their kids out and different solutions. They had a lot of community involvement. The board self-evaluation, I took, it was kind of a little 20 minutes on it, but since we're going to be going through that, it's part of it is personal self-reflective, we'll all do it separately, and then the other part, we all come back together and look at collated results and get walked through and make ourselves have board goals that align with strategic goals, and then also superintendent goals that all work together. And then a refresher on Robert's rules. I did a course in college, and it's fairly natural, but the one thing I wanted to pull out of there is that it was intended to be efficient and not to be a bully system. So people who get bullied and ship out the rules, that's not the intention from Robert. And the point of order versus point of information. That point of information exists and should be used if you have a question. And you should always feel comfortable to ask for a point of information. And I forgot about that one in the depths of Robert's rules. And so that was my NSBA experience. And in community ed, there is a pretty dedicated group of 15 or so people that met. And it was a focus on the ECFE program and how they pivoted a little differently than the rest of the district, but they're also working with smaller children and different needs. So they were working through it. They retained the majority, like better than 50% of the students, which is great. It's T-based, and being virtual is difficult for the smallest people. And they've been doing a really good job with keeping special events going. So they'll have an event and they'll figure out what went well, and that's what happens the next one. And they fix the things that weren't streamlined, and they've been doing their best to keep doing special events for community ed across the board. So that was really nice to get an insight, more information from Corey and his group about how well we're still doing with community ed, and the catalog, the points of pride that they've included plenty of things that are virtual, and then quite a few things that don't have to be virtual, but are socially distant, like golf and things like that, that they're working with what we've got and making it great instead of being sad about what we can't do. And we'll get that back someday. So those are the workshops and reports.
Wow, she's so thorough. So I guess I really enjoy the speakers, and I like the idea about the diversity for this first speaker, Phyllis. I think the thing that I've always said is that you don't know until you know, and you don't always put yourself in someone else's shoes, and then when you finally see how they're feeling, it is pretty eye-opening, and I think that I've learned in the last few months, and that was just another thing that we talked about at the conference. At the conference, it really was very, very vivid to me that it came out in her conversation. And I did miss going because I do really enjoy being there. I think this is really nice to get to go see the exhibit hall, and you feel like you're proud to be there. I mean, you feel inspired, and I miss that feeling of being, it's always a kickoff to the first part of the year where you have the camaraderie and shared experiences. So I did really miss that, and the NSB is coming up, and of course I signed up for that already. Joy, but I mean, it's just also a very empowering event, which you miss all those things. But so I'm really glad I attended. I wish I could have done a little bit more. I had a lot of deadlines at work, so the timing wasn't the greatest for me, but I did really enjoy it, and especially the high school league. That understanding their financial problems, it's really evident how much they really need for kids, and losing that revenue for state tournaments. I mean, that's a huge part of their revenue, and without that, they're really not trying to put the cost onto the schools. That was pretty clear also. So thankful for that they could adjust their budget and really not have to wait. We had some layoffs, but it wasn't. They're really trying to keep people employed. So really impressive. So that's And also real positive happening since I don't see the high school kids going, driving in front of me, going to the high school, so, and seeing that parking lot. I mean, I drive by it every day. So it's just seeing the parking lot filled again. It's been pretty, pretty exciting. So, very happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Porter. Member Dell?
I'll just add a couple of things quick. I want to put a plug in based on what Julie just said about the National School Board Association. I'll put a plug in for that because it's happening for 2021 online as a virtual conference on April 8th to the 10th. So I think a number of us are planning to do that. Unfortunately, maybe we can pool drive over to get some coffee at some place. So if we're driving anywhere, we can do it virtually from home. So that was one. The second thing, I'm going to put a little plug in for Mike Kennan. Just because of what you said, this is probably same tree, different branch. But on the Minnesota State High School League, right before I came to this meeting, I heard on the news that they're now going to bring the tournaments back. The state tournaments are coming back, and they're going to do the best they can for March through April to try to get all of the tournaments held. So there'll be a lot of new rules and a lot of different things happening, I guess. So that's kind of a report from Mike Kennan.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
Good to hear.
Thanks for letting us know.
Member Tyson?
I just wanted to mention in my report that we did elect a new District 6, Michelle Yenner. And South April Nursing Home, they put out there on Jill served with her on 9/16, and I think she's going to do an excellent job.
Thank you. I really enjoyed the ability to log into MSBA at my convenience and watch things when I couldn't do so at work. That was handy. And then, but I did very much miss seeing you all in person, going downtown and riding the bus and all that we've done in the past as part of MSBA. So I did miss that. We'll move on to Communications Committee, Member Tyson.
Yes, so we met Thursday, January 1st, and you know, the Communications Committee does such an excellent job at pivoting and reinventing the wheel. They sent Swans did a registration. There was a video, and I actually went and looked at that on their website. That was awesome. Kind of walking through the building, so up and coming, you know, students can feel more comfortable and confident about what it looks like navigating it. They did a postcard for 7 through 12 because you know high school registration is happening, and so or did happen. So that was another difficult thing. They had to get that out. So we also got the update on the new catalog. It's just wonderful what we do with how that looks, how people embrace that, getting that calendar. Renee also told us that when the elementary came back, that Ronnie Ranger was out at some of the sites, and that was it the Forest Lake Student Council was there, and I saw those on Facebook, and I just thought that's an amazing interaction, welcoming those students back. So that concludes my report.
Member Tyson, 916, Member Dell.
With 916 being the new appointed member from our board to their board, I attended a board orientation on January 8th, and then I've already attended 2 of their board meetings. One was on the 13th of January, the other was on the 30th of February. Some of the key points that I found during the meeting were board compensation remained the same, much like many districts now in COVID. We approved a legislative platform. We had a closed meeting, which I'm going to come back to in a minute, and we talked about fiscal year 2020. We had the 2020 audit approved by MMKR. On the 3rd of February, we talked about a joint purchasing usage, which the district runs, where they allow any schools, be they members or not, to join a joint purchasing platform and actually go out and help buy something. So what they did over the year in 2020 was $7,457,831 in purchases for all members of that joint purchasing contract. Forest Lake contributed $56,261 in purchases from our district. We talked about ESY already, as we're doing here in our district, talking about dates and times for ESY. The superintendent search is continuing on. March 17th, they're expecting to have interviews with some of the candidates that have been chosen. They're expecting to have somewhere between maybe 8 and 10 candidates for their superintendent. And on March 24th, I'll be participating along with the rest of the board in the finalist interview and hopefully making a decision from that. They also introduced at the February 3rd meeting a mobile education center that they're doing. And the last thing I want to bring up, which is probably one of the most important, and I've already talked to Steve about this, but I can't say, it's been a closed meeting, and I can't get into all the details on it because it was closed. However, I can share that the district was a victim of a sophisticated ransomware incident. It prevents users from accessing files which precluded the staff from accessing any of their network or any of their own devices. So they have retained a cybersecurity forensic expert. They're doing some work with that along with their insurance agency to figure it out. And they're back and running, everything's fine. But anyway, it's something that apparently is occurring a lot in school districts these days, as well as many other businesses. And that was the big thing. But that's it. That concludes that section.
Thanks, Dr. Kettle. Policy, member Lucas.
Okay, policy committee, and don't want any spoilers because they're later on in the day, but the theme was old and new. There were 70s era policies and absolutely brand new policies. So updating the board payments that we voted on in the past. It actually hadn't been done in a few times, so if anybody's reviewing the policy, it looks like a bigger jump. Because it didn't actually get updated the last time it was done. This was catching up. Licensure policy to use current technology, wellness, and this one I think deserves kind of a pull from the report because it's saying goodbye to a homegrown wellness system that largely was a bit ahead of the times, creating you are healthier when you do things to keep your body and mind healthy all the time, not just waiting for yourself to get sick. So it was an incentive program that the district created. And now there are modern whole products that are better, and so we're moving to one of those. This was weeding out some of the policy that referred to it, but it definitely deserves a note that it served well for a good long time. The consultant leave is for any of our teachers who are skilled and apt to speak at a conference, working out their thing. And then the new one is we are already amending our face covering policy, which is like the ink is fairly dry and it's a little different now. So hopefully the change that now says reflecting state changes will mean we don't have to change it every month. And hopefully it goes away sooner rather than later, but until that time the policy will prevent anybody wondering about what the rules at Barclay are. And that concludes the report. Oh, there were 13 people there, including 2 students, a retired teacher who actually phoned in from Arizona, and a few people who are working towards requirements for their education. So having these online, I think, really opens up the door to more people. We never had 12 people before. So. Okay. So there were 12 people there. This one I didn't actually write down all the different people that were there. Mostly, they're saying generalized spread of people. There was a presentation on blended learning methods that's been in development since pre-COVID and definitely helps us pivot into distance learning because the blended learning method is more how can you use technology in the classroom. And so it was less of a jump to how can you make technology the classroom. But they're thinking of how this is going to pivot back when everyone's back in person. So it's using kind of different modes of kids doing a module on a computer, doing something hands-on, and it gives I'm sure there's a week's worth of information they could have talked about, but the thing that stood out to me is that they can tailor the experience to the child, so they can change some of the methodology for learning, some of the visuals that are there to be more specific to the student or whatever their comfort might be. And it also gives an opportunity to prove mastery in different ways than just a multiple choice exam or a written exam. So it's not going to replace the school that everyone knows, but it will probably enhance and give kids a better way to express themselves. And they're building a library of good lessons that can be used by different teachers, and not just social studies like science can use it and math can use it. Seeing how this technique can be used in anything, and it reminds me of the forest, like the forest can be used for anything. So this is take the tools and plug in the right academics, and it gives good results for kids. And yeah, their goals are to make it cultural and identity specific. That concludes my report.
I'd also like to add that the plan that they're looking at is how we're going to be doing this in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and 5 years. How we transition, because we've been kind of in a, the house is burning down, how do we get this all working right away? And it was really nice to see them kind of thinking long-term about how technology and our schools all kind of work together and meld together in the future. Thank you.
Move on to staff welfare, Member Olson.
Staff welfare, we talked about enrollment. It's holding steady. Great news, summer school is going to be run for 6 weeks this year. That's 2 extra weeks, and we'll be focusing on math and literacy. Budget, we talked about right-sizing the budget. But with enrollment loss less than expected, we hope to stay neutral staff number-wise. And we talked about vaccines. Forest Lake got 15s. We talked about how we prioritize who is getting those within the guidelines that were given. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Member Olson. Buildings and grounds, Member Kettle.
Buildings and grounds, we covered as usual, pretty standard topic. The athletic facilities projects updates, everything's on time and moving ahead. It's all looking good. We talked about the CLC project update, and on that one, I had a couple of notes. There are now, if you haven't been around the CLC, they have blocked out the road that typically runs behind the school there. They're using that for construction. They're actually looking at now having the school begin to be torn down. It's actually ahead of schedule a little bit from where it was. So everything's moving ahead on that. We talked about buildings and grounds items. Some of the future projects included, we're looking at the ice arena and some new refrigeration upgrades that are necessary. When we bought the ice arena, the refrigeration units were already used when we bought them, and so it's been something like 13 years, so we have to upgrade those. We talked about roofing. They're starting to look at all the schools again for projects where we have to do some re-roofing, etc. We talked about parking lots, and again, they're rotating schools and beginning to look at what we need to do for parking lots. And HVC efficiencies. And then, of course, Bill gave his great report on buildings and grounds. So that was pretty much it. So that's it.
Thank you, Member Kettle. Equity, Member Rachel.
Yeah, thank you. Just a comment on the ice arena. I was here when we bought that. And we still had the old stadium, so I'm glad it's been a success story long enough to need upgrades. Yeah, great asset. For equity, of course, this month is Black History Month. Forest Lake Area Schools will be hosting a virtual celebration combining the work of the High School Black Student Union, the Middle School African American Leadership Group, and the African American Ancestral Parent Group, tentatively set for February 25th. The Forest Lake District Equity Leaders have had their second meeting of the year this past month with facilitation and support from Regina Seabrook of Equity Alliance Minnesota. The group is focusing on implementation of the concepts embedded in Doretta Hammond's book, Culturally Responsive Teaching and Brain. The group read the book last year, and an example from the book's framework is the importance of building deeper relationships with students to learn their background, knowledge, and interests, which are especially important as our schools continue to become more culturally and ethnically diverse. This information will help teachers tailor their lessons to heighten student interest and ultimately learning.
Thank you, Member Rachel. Finance Committee, Member Portman.
We talked about year and ESSER funding. It's going to be a second round. Not sure exactly how much money that's going to be, but hoping to get some additional funds. Fiscal year 21 budget status. As Member Olson said, we're down less students than what we had budgeted, so we're hoping for limited right sizing. Legislative update. We talked about hoping to get a 2% increase. Continuum special ed cross subsidy and also transportation dollars that we've always been fighting for in our district. Hoping we can get some So something going with that, because it's been a long time coming. Talked about fiscal year 22 budget, and hopefully we're on budget for that, and hopefully, minimal right sizing, and we're also, same amount of lost students, and hopefully we'll have less for next year, and trying to be in person if we can, or just be in person like every district wants by the fall. Hopefully that will happen. And that concludes our report.
Couldn't agree more.
Mm-hmm.
City of Forest Lake, Member Tyson?
Yes, Mayor Bain has been facilitating the recent equity lab. The city is in collaboration with us, Forest Lake Area Schools, the YMCA, and they had a group meet that just focused on the sustainability of the work and what that's going to look like, and moving forward, how can we keep all these pieces together. And so that's in its steering group phase, so kind of coming to the end of that. On February 2nd, the Parks and Trails and Lakes Commission met, and I listened to a little bit of that. Ryan Goodman, the engineer for Forest Lake, was giving a 10-year trail development update. So it was interesting listening to. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Member Tyson. Superintendent report, Dr. Massey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I get a couple of slides updated here, I have to say it's really refreshing to listen to your reports because it speaks to an enormous amount of investment in each of you, and your attendance at MSBA, your attendance at committees, your willingness to dive in and get that information shared out. It's really refreshing and admirable to see the level of investment and commitment. So thank you for that. Also recognizing the Linwood team tonight, Principal Gretchen Matson and her team, and the use of the school for us. We're picking up just a ton of momentum there and making personalized, integrated, cross-curricular learning happen in such an exciting way for kids. It's really an asset for us. As Member Wakefield indicated, February is Black History Month, and of course we are sharing resources and engaging kids in lessons of history and celebrating Black History Month. But I would say that in addition to February, Black history and cultural learning across our curriculum is really essential. So we have, as you've heard me talk before, are really moving forward in a concerted effort to make cultural learning, culturally responsive curriculum and instruction really embedded on a foundational level in all of our curriculum. So we are really doing some significant work there. Let me take a few minutes and walk through some updates on where we're at with COVID in our community. These are the consideration factors that we have used as we moved in and out of models. And we are back in person, as Member Corcoran referenced, with high school and secondary kids back. We've been back fully in person at the elementary. In a second, I'll skip over the slide when I get there because I'll mention it here, that on Monday, February 8th, we will have 9th graders back, and now we'll have every student back for either hybrid or full in-person learning. And hopefully, we can stay there for the long term. You've seen the slide before, but it's updated now with the latest 2-week report, including the report that came out today. On the far right-hand side, for Anoka, Chicago, and Washington County, that yellow, goldish, smallest bar on the chart represents the last 2 weeks in each of our counties. Keep in mind that that is with 2 to 3 times the level of testing. Total cases. You look on the right-hand side of each of those data sets. That's where we were at when we started the year. You'll notice that we are currently, total cases with more testing, at or lower than we were when we started the school year in our counties. So our decision to be back in person is supported and backed up by this data. When we look at test positivity rate, the spike there coincides with the spike that you see here. And the purple bar, you can see that spike there around the Thanksgiving, the winter break, holiday season, and a steady decrease in test positivity rate. Test positivity rate, again, is the rate of COVID. Regardless of the level of testing, the rate remains the same. We are now well below 5% on a consecutive basis. In fact, today was the lowest test positivity rate that I've seen since I've been tracking the data, at about 3%. The state indicates that when the test positivity rate is at or below 5%, we are in a safe zone for businesses, bars, restaurants, beginning to open up the community and schools, of course. So again, once again, the data supports that our kids are safe back in school. I would never say that we are out of the woods, that we don't have any risk of course we are. We're wearing masks for a reason. Our kids are wearing masks for a reason. We're social distancing. All the safety measures that we have in place are strictly followed for a reason. But the level of exposure and the level of risk is far lower than it was earlier in the year.
I don't want to interrupt you, but can you go back one slide?
Sure.
I just want to highlight something which struck me. On all of those yellow bars on the right, the weeks were based, if I understand it correctly, on the weeks of 110 to 123. I think that's really important because that's still within the holiday period.
Yeah.
You know, we had so many warnings about what the holiday would do to COVID, and that bar demonstrates that we must have done a really good job.
We'll go back to the green bar and then follow that to the right. That's Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, holiday season. And we didn't see the spike that we were warned about, meaning that people followed guidance, advice, mitigation efforts, and we're seeing the fruits of it. Thank you for that. Sure. So again, test positivity rate just extremely positive. And the same trend line you'll see here with cases in our local communities by way of zip code. Again, spike and a steady decrease since that time. As I mentioned before, by next Monday, we will have all of our students back in the classroom. Secondary, Monday, Wednesday on the maroon day, Tuesday, Thursday on the gold days, Fridays being the distance learning day. Elementary kids, all kids back 5 days a week. Summer school was mentioned earlier as well. We are going from the 21st of June through the 30th of July. And these are extended days for summer school to capture as much learning as you can on literacy, math, and social emotional learning. The governor and the state is actually putting in financial investment to expand eligibility. So no longer do you need to meet the strict eligibility criteria that you've had in the past. The teacher identifying any student with learning loss and need for summer school is now eligible for summer school. And we are really promoting the need for teachers because we're hoping to see even more kids in summer school. We'll be up at Wyoming and we'll be at the Education Center for summer school. Originally, and you can see here, I've got here still Forest Lake Middle School. We just switched this week because Goodview this summer will be having a mill and overlay project across Goodview all the way down to 210. And they've taken the walking path out of commission as well. So for the interest of congestion and student safety, we're moving the secondary program 412 over to the education. Vaccines, Member Olson mentioned 15 slots. That was about 3 weeks ago. The next week we have 315 spots. And we have staff that probably close to 200 or more have already received their first vaccine through the state program down at the XL Energy Center. We have staff that were on a waiting list, and those staff are now being called in to make an appointment. We still have many staff on a waiting list, and probably 2/3 of our staff that have not even entered into the system. We're beginning some conversations with our counties, Washington County, to see if we can begin to do some more vaccination locally, and we'll have more to share about that soon. The governor's framework on the Due North plan. I won't get into the 100+ page budget line by line, but he's created a budget framework based on these priorities. And I won't read those, but it's encouraging and exciting to see a budget that is driven by these values and these benchmarks and these guideposts. And then, of course, there are specific expenditures and investments that support each of these. His specific budget calls for 1% in the first year, 2.5% in the second year. If you would have asked us in the fall, what might we expect in the biennial budget, I would have said, if we could get zero and not a decrease, we'd be happy. But with the COVID relief funds round 1, COVID relief funds round 2, our district is in a better spot, for sure. And the state is, the governor, I should say, we haven't seen the budget out of the House and Senate yet, but the governor is really driving that we need to continue to support the increases in the education budget. Keep in mind that the education budget from the last biennium does not have an inflationary increase built into it for the next biennium. So if we get 2% each year, that's roughly inflation. Yet it's perceived as an increased investment in education, simply an inflationary increase. 1% to 2.5% is not an inflationary increase. But given the financial constraints of the state and the nation, that could be a good thing, and we'll see what stimulus round 3 may come out of the federal government. We're paying attention to that. That is the last slide, but I would just end with, we were in the Senate yesterday in testifying on Senate File 408, that's our transportation bill. And we were laid over for inclusion in the Omnibus Education Bill on the Senate side. That bill was carried as a chief author by Senator Housley. Did a marvelous job advocating passionately on this issue for our district and districts across the state who have a transportation deficit. The committee is chaired, the Senate Finance and Policy Committee is chaired by Senator Chamberlain, and he has chaired in a conservative way the tax committee in the past number of years, and he is also signed on to this bill and enthusiastically supported this bill yesterday. So we're excited about that. We'll get our bill moving in the House as well. And that concludes my report.
All right, thank you, Dr. Massey. Any questions, Dr. Massey? Thank you. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Yes, I'd like to call for 2. Sorry.
Do you want to discuss it?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we can have a discussion. We're going to pull it.
Okay, we'll discuss it. Old habits die hard. So I'd like to recognize Kathy Beach. I used to work in the Sandy Elementary building where she was from us. She is a wonderful person in special ed. And she is retiring after 29 years. I just wish her the most wonderful retirement, Kathy. And then also Carlene Bettner is retiring, wishing her a wonderful retirement after 28 years. So we have these amazing educators that stay with our students, and I know my daughter, older daughter, had Carlene. So we wish them a wonderful retirement. And thank you for all those years of service.
Any other discussion? Member Kevin?
I just want to talk about donations, as I do at every meeting. On the donations, this month we had a total of $33,888.84 donated to the district for just a month. And although there are many, many great contributions, the one that stood out above all else was a $10,000 donation from the Friends of Joseph UPI, hope I say that right, Hospitals and Research Institutes, which is JUHRI, for an ambulance for the Forest Lake High School OPEC program. So thank you again to everybody who contributed for the month to add up to that almost $34,000 from the district. Thank you. That ends my report.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. That was kind of nice, Member Clerk,
You want me
wasn't it?
to say your name?
That's okay.
All right, moving on to action items. Agenda item number 8, we have routine action item, appoint board representative to the Equity Alliance. We missed this at the last meeting, so it is on this month's agenda. Currently, that spot is held by Member Rayfield. Do you wish to continue?
Yeah, I'd love to continue. It's a great group to be associated with, and I was just elected treasurer, so.
Oh, there you go.
Any other interest? All right, I'm ready to do it. We need to do that by motion, I assume we do.
I would
So let's make a motion, yeah.
Appoint.
So moved.
Appoint one.
We have, yeah, we have a motion to appoint Member Rayfield to Equity Alliance. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, motion passes. We'll move on to 8.2, face covering policy 711. Dr. Massey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Member Luker indicated, this is back on for an update. As the policy committee reviewed this policy, realizing that there's been modifications to this governor's executive order that came out this summer. So rather than referencing the executive order, we are changing the language referencing this policy to all applicable lawful state, federal, and local regulations, which include, of course, an executive order. And then on page 3, we're including language regarding face coverings during athletic activities, FIAD, and those kinds of things. So you can see that language there on item 2 and item number 6. And with that, administration recommends approval.
We have a motion to approve 8.2.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second, discussion?
I'd just like to say, I think it's nice to keep on this stuff, you know.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's important that we stay nimble as this pandemic moves, that we're keeping up with the policies, et cetera.
I actually have a question, and I thought of it after the policy meeting. After COVID, when face coverings are not required, will they still be allowed if a child has a mild cold or something and they wish to wear a mask? Will it still be permitted?
You know, we have not had that conversation. There would be a lot of wisdom in that, and something we'll want to have conversation about. Much like all the technology and the new learning pieces changing the way we do business, and that might be
Right, or they're
more common.
immunocompromised. I mean, there's so many good reasons to wear one by choice, to have a healthier society, but not requiring every single person.
We'll be sure to review that at that time.
I have one question for the superintendent. Under D, under 1, so a student that can tolerate uses a 504 plan, correct? And then for an employee, it's you or a designee that determines that it's okay to mental health, that they can't tolerate it and they don't.
So we require medical note for that, and then require face shield or some modification to the face coverage.
So just the doctor's note is all they need. Okay, great, thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Member Clerk, please take a roll call.
Okay, Member Kettle.
Aye.
Aye, Member Olson.
Aye.
Aye, Member Rayfield.
Aye.
Aye, Member Tyson.
Aye.
Aye, Member Peterson.
Aye.
Peterson is aye, Member Luther votes aye, Member Corcoran.
Aye.
Member Corcoran is aye.
All right, moving on to 8.3, authorize administration to request bids for re-roofing. Director Martini.
Good evening, and it's with you folks. We're asking Atkins Associates to together the bid process. We're looking to remove portions of the first area education center, and that work starts after the new fiscal year. We're going to be working that probably look for an August start as opposed to that second start. We'd ask your permission to walk to this group.
All right. Did everybody catch that? I know it was a little bit.
Education center. Yeah.
North Lake Education Center, and we are authorizing to go out for bids.
Yes.
All right. Yep. We have a motion.
So, second.
A motion and a second on 8.3. Any discussion?
I just have one question for Larry. It says in portions of roofs on the education center, so parts of it are being replaced?
or is it all of it?
Be a part. Larry, you want to describe that?
We would be re-roofing western section, and it would be approximately $300,000 worth of work.
Oh, okay. Great, thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Member Tyson. Member Olson?
And Larry, is this money set aside in the bond, or where is this money coming from?
So this would be long-term facilities maintenance revenue in the 21-22 budget. It would work, the work would start after the fiscal year begins.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, Member Clerk?
Roll call?
I need a roll call.
Okay, Member Olson?
Aye.
Olson is aye. Member Rayfield?
Aye.
Member Tyson?
Aye.
Member Peterson?
Aye.
Member Luther votes aye. Member Corcoran?
Aye.
And Member Pettit?
Aye.
All
Motion passes. We'll move on to new business. First reading, 9-1, first reading, school board member reimbursement guidelines, policy 103A. Dr. Massey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As was indicated earlier, the change in this policy that is being recommended as a first reading, you'll see on the second page, where there's a strike through the previous stipend of $410 per month that has been moved to $508.40 per month. As was noted, that is not a single jump for this current year, which you approved previously at 2%. We're a couple of years behind updating the policy, so that captures those changes over time. And that's the first reading, so no action tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Massey. We'll move to the licensure policy 416 under 92.
Thank you. And since the original draft of this policy, the state has transferred, if you will, the licensing responsibility to the Professional Educator Licensing and Standards Board policy. So the policy revision here is adjusting the old reference to the Minnesota Department of Education to policy as the licensing board.
All right, we will move on to 9-3, consultation leave of absence policy 424 under 9-3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, a first reading here after the policy committee has reviewed this policy. This policy is speaking to and defining conditions under which faculty members are reimbursed and allowed to provide consultation services during their work time and under their position in the school district. So the changes here speak to the approval process and the conditions under which they can be paid for that consultation services. So obviously, if they are being paid for this service, they'll need to use their leave time, vacation time, or unpaid time to receive compensation during that time. They can't be paid as a regular workday and get a fee for their consultation. And then item number 5 identifies that specifically the superintendent or designee would be the approval process, and it strikes out the requirement that the board be part of the approval process. We believe that the superintendent should be sufficient to grant that approval. And that's the first reading, no action.
All right, 9-4, first reading wellness incentive program policy 437.
Yeah, the changes here are speaking to changes to the wellness incentive program where we are referencing the district's employment benefits committee under item B there. That's been a really effective policy with broad representation that meets monthly. And so it really is just updating some language. This policy was drafted initially in 2004 and updating language to be more representative of how it's plays out today.
We'll move to 9-5, first reading school bus leasing, Director Martini.
Thank you. We shared this information with the Finance Committee. Mr. Gray is going to lease 2022 buses. He's not interested in purchasing any of the new vehicles, and this is just a first reading.
All right, thank you, Director Martini. For those who didn't catch it, purchasing or leasing new buses, we are not purchasing any of last year's or the 2020 buses. All right.
22.
All right, with that, review the upcoming calendar dates, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor of adjournment, signify by aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Nice, yeah. Love that, Carol. Very good.